Chapter 24. My Big Mistake. As life's train continues its momentum, I've gotten so much less young. Yet with age, I've attained a respectable kind of wisdom that can't be ascribed to the young and dumb. Wisdom comes through making mistakes, a landfill of them, some buried and forgotten, others surfacing decades later, revealing a past that can never be disposed of. As I gradually got more familiar with my husband, I saw him as a trapdoor spider, cowering in his little hole. I was more like a social butterfly, the life of the party, making up for all the years I didn't talk. For as long as I can remember, connection and affection have been as important to me as breathing in and out. Gary was my opposite. He stuffed his feelings in a box and carefully buried them beneath a shitload of trash. Communication that leads to emotional intimacy is my personal love language, and I desperately needed to understand what he was thinking, to the degree that I might have unintentionally pushed him further into his shell. Like many men, my husband had an overpowering drive to work hard. As I look back on the life we shared, it's clear to me that his drive was more about proving himself to the world than doing the right thing. In our first year of marriage, I put Gary on a pedestal and saw him as a deeply spiritual man. When he was asked to speak in church, his dynamic deliveries resonated as if God himself were handing him a script. And when talking with other church members, I sensed his peaceful, calm repose. I felt proud to be his wife and believed he was destined for greatness. But then I started to notice his obsession about climbing the church's hierarchical ladder. As he grew more aggressive in his search for self-aggrandizement, his radical attitude frightened me. For example, he used the LDS motto, "A woman's place is in the home," as a weapon and a whip to control me. He worked twice as hard so I could be a stay-at-home mom, and belittled me fiercely if I tried to expand my horizons. About a decade into our marriage, I enrolled in a college piano pedagogy class to perfect my piano teaching skills so I could obtain students with the goal of bringing in a little extra income for our family. After dinner one evening, I wandered away from the table before clearing the plates so I could finish my homework assignment. I was scribbling out my final notes in the den when my spider of a spouse suddenly appeared behind me. Before I had time to think, he reached around me and snatched my assignment from my hand, ripping it into shreds. "Wifely duties come first," he groused. I sat there with an incredulous expression. All my work was in a shredded pile. Why couldn't he have expressed his frustration in a kinder way? Instead, he chose to be cruel. Yet he was striving to be a saint. I couldn't make sense of it. Trying to figure him out was like trying to put together a 5,000-piece jigsaw with no clue what the picture was supposed to be. Over the years, I madly hunted for those missing pieces, but there was just far too many lost, broken, and distorted parts to have ever made sense of the picture. With such little time to get to know him before we married, I never had a chance to experience his unhealthy behaviors. In his defense, he was trying too hard to be perfect, perhaps due to his lack of self-love. I saw him as a broken man. I was devoted to him because I didn't see a way out. We had been sealed in the temple. Our 3 kids were born under the covenant, which meant we were a forever family. Gary's vicious assault on that fateful night when I was asleep and pregnant was the violent choice of a non-communicative man with a sudden pathological need to talk. It made no sense. Did he really believe that slapping me would make me want to talk to him? Was his need to control me so intense that he lost his mind? This was one of those distorted puzzle pieces that just didn't fit anywhere. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Neither my husband's shame nor his vows to never abuse me again had any power to stop Mr. Hyde. Dr. Jekyll would occasionally slip into the shadows, and Mr. Hyde would emerge without warning. One afternoon, during a heated argument in the hallway, he plowed into my face so hard that he knocked the wind out of me. I lay on the floor stunned and disoriented as the volatile Mr. Hyde stormed out the front door. Neither Dr. Jekyll nor Mr. Hyde returned for 3 long days. When Sunday arrived, I tried not to blink to avoid calling attention to my bruised eyelid. The last thing I wanted was for the ward members to see my husband as a monster. Although Gary was pretty messed up, I had plenty of flaws of my own, but I hated contention. I would often go out of my way to avoid it. Before we had children, I enjoyed working outside the home as a sales clerk at an office supply store. I was fun, outgoing, and gregarious. The lackluster little wifey had finally emerged from her cocoon as a radiant, colorful woman. Perhaps Gary was threatened by my newfound confidence, and the only way he knew how to cope was to strike out and belittle me. I, on the other hand, thrived on the energy of others. Being stuck with a man whose emotional barometer was broken threatened to suck the life out of me. Seeing my troubled husband fly into a full-blown Mr. Hyde rage that seemingly sprang from nowhere was scary. Like the time he yanked our wall-mounted phone off the kitchen wall so I couldn't contact anyone when I felt threatened by his anger. But through the years, I made excuses for him. I mean, it wasn't like he hit me every day. Eventually, I got brave enough to share his abuse with my parents. They had a good talk with him. It didn't help. He continued to put me down and call me names, destroying my sense of self-worth along with my ability to think rationally. I even convinced myself I deserved to be slapped. After all, I was highly emotional. I was the kind of woman that when happy, I was over the moon. When I was really hurt, I'd sink onto my bed and cry into my pillow. When angry, my voice would speed up and get a little shrilly. But I was a love bug and could forget about my anger in 2 seconds if I felt understood. It just wasn't in my nature to retaliate with cruel digs or hit below the belt with ugly name-calling. The thing that evoked anger in me the most was when Gary would attack my personal character and falsely accuse me of being someone I wasn't. Perhaps my quiet-natured, introverted husband just couldn't handle someone like me, a woman with hardwired emotional extremes. Yet beyond all that he put me through, the worst abuse for me was his punishing silence. When he checked out, my world stopped. The isolation and lack of connection was the worst kind of hell I could suffer. When I couldn't break the unbearable silence, it made me want to kill. His refusal to show any emotion only amplified mine. In time, I learned that Gary's silence was his way of gaining leverage over me. "Look at you," he'd snare. "You're acting like an hysterical lunatic. You've got big problems." He was right. At least I knew it. I went on a screaming rampage while he sat there like cold flint, gloating at the success of his torture. As our marriage quickly deteriorated, my troubled spouse refused to go to counseling. By agreeing to get help alone, I hoped he would see me as a good example and eventually join me in this worthy self-improvement project. After I located a highly recommended psychiatrist, and this man listened to my story, in his astuteness, he suggested that if I wanted my marriage to work, I would need to step up to the plate and own my goods. He had a point. Perhaps Gary would start to respect me if I learned how to become an empowered woman. My first assignment toward empowerment was to purchase a copy of Cosmopolitan, a popular 80s women's magazine containing articles about fashion, relationships, self-improvement, and careers. It would never be approved or suggested reading by my church leaders, but I trusted the doctor's judgment. When Gary walked through the door that evening and found me on the living room couch, casually flipping through the pages of my assigned magazine, his brain went into high alert. I glanced over at him with slanted brows. Is he going to rip the pages like he did my homework assignment? His eyes looked glacial as he slowly edged his way toward me.